The tariff war, I was in China, and the Indian ambassador said to me, a generation of trust has been lost by this president of yours. See, if we don't speak the truth about the damage that this president has done, not only at home but abroad, then we're just not living in reality. The new generation is not only going to have to rebuild America, we're going to have to rebuild our relationships around the world.
Have just a few months of Trump undone 3 decades of trust between India and the United States? Well, that's the warning coming from an American congressman, and it captures the strange contradiction at the heart of the India-U.S. relationship today. On the one hand, Washington continues to talk about a deep strategic partnership with India. Summit after summit, officials speak about shared values, common interests, and a relationship that will define the 21st century. But on the other hand, the actions coming out of Washington tell a very different story. Tariffs, public pressure, threats, disputes over Russian oil, and repeated attempts to claim credit for India's decisions on national security. It's almost a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation. One America speaks the language of partnership, the other seems increasingly willing to undermine Indian interests. And nowhere was this contradiction more visible than at the 9th US-India Strategic Partnership Forum Summit in Washington. At the summit, Congressman Ro Khanna delivered a blunt assessment. According to Khanna, actions taken by the Trump administration have severely damaged the trust that India and the US spent nearly 3 decades building. He pointed to a series of unilateral American decisions that, in his view, have hurt India's interests: tariffs, trade, Russian oil, public spats, and of course, then came a completely different message. Just hours later, Trump's India envoy Sergio Gor spoke. He dismissed reports of friction between India and the US as little more than media noise.
So to all those pundits that sit online and tweet and say this relationship is in trouble, when you look at the facts of where this relationship stands, whether it's trade, whether it's defense, whether it's the people-to-people ties, the relationship is on strong footing. And we need everyone here to continue working towards taking that relationship to the next level.
His argument was simple. The relationship remains strong, the partnership remains deep, and the personal chemistry between Trump and Modi remains one of the strongest relationships between any two world leaders. So which version is closer to reality? The answer lies not in speeches, but in actions. Let's put the rhetoric aside for a moment and look at the facts. The first major blow came in the form of tariffs. The Trump administration launched a global tariff campaign. While many countries faced a baseline tariff, India was hit particularly hard with a 25% levy, which later was revised to almost 50% before coming down again. Then came Operation Sindoor. After the operation was paused, Trump repeatedly claimed that he had personally brokered a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. India, of course, flatly rejected that narrative every single time. The disagreement quickly became public. Meanwhile, Pakistan's leadership took a very different approach. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir openly praised Trump and even backed calls for him to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. India did no such thing, and relations appeared to deteriorate even further. The next flashpoint was Russian oil. Washington imposed another round of punitive tariffs on India, arguing that New Delhi's purchases of Russian crude were helping Moscow. India's position was simple. It was the same Western governments that had encouraged India to continue buying discounted Russian oil because it helped stabilize global energy markets after the Ukraine war. Now suddenly, the same policy was being used as grounds for punishment. Then came the rhetoric. Trump and several senior administration officials began making increasingly harsh comments about India and its economy. Taken together, many in New Delhi saw a clear pattern emerging. A country described as a strategic partner was increasingly being treated like an adversary. This brings us to the larger question. Is this really about India or is it about Donald Trump? Across the world, many governments have come to a very simple conclusion. Praise Trump publicly and relations tend to improve magically. Challenge him, contradict him, or refuse to flatter him, and relations become slightly more difficult. Look at Pakistan, look at Qatar, look at the UAE, even China has adjusted its approach when dealing with the Trump administration. Political commentator Fareed Zakaria has repeatedly argued that Trump's foreign policy is unusually personalized, driven as much by personal relationships and recognition as by traditional strategic calculations. The problem for India is that it cannot conduct diplomacy the way authoritarian regimes do or dictatorships do. It cannot grant crypto contracts to Trump associates at a whim. It cannot appeal for Nobel Peace Prizes publicly. India is a mature democracy. No Indian government can simply endorse every claim coming from Washington or publicly shower praise on a foreign leader for domestic political convenience. And that creates friction. India is not alone. Brazil has faced pressure. South Africa has faced pressure. Several European allies have faced pressure. Even close American allies like Japan and South Korea have found themselves on the receiving end of Trump's public criticism and economic threats. So where does that leave India-U.S. relations? Many analysts would argue that ties are now facing their most serious strains since the late 90s. The last major low point, remember, had come after India's 1998 nuclear tests, when the Clinton administration at that time had imposed sanctions and relations had deteriorated really fast. But over the following decades, both countries worked hard to rebuild trust. The civil nuclear agreement transformed the relationship. Defense cooperation expanded dramatically. Trade surged, technology partnerships deepened, and India emerged as one of Washington's most important strategic partners in the Indo-Pacific. That progress took decades, which is why the current tensions matter, because for the first time in years, there are serious questions about the direction of the relationship. But the reality is that India and the United States still need each other. The strategic logic behind the partnership hasn't disappeared. China remains a challenge. Supply chains matter, technology cooperation matters, defense cooperation matters, but partnerships ultimately depend on trust, and trust is much easier to destroy than to build. The concern being voiced today, even by figures inside the American political establishment, is that decades of goodwill may be eroding far faster than anyone imagined. Is this a temporary phase or the beginning of a deeper shift in Indo-U.S. relations? That remains to be seen. For now, one thing is clear. The relationship that was once described as the defining partnership of the 21st century is facing one of its toughest tests yet. This is Times Access, where global stories meet India's perspective. Click on the bell icon to subscribe, because the next big global shift will have India at its center.